I'm Melina Wang, and welcome to Discovering China, the show that brings the traditions of the ancient Chinese right into the modern world. This week, Margaret Trey takes a look at Chinese artworks up for auction at Christie's, and Ben Hedges talks to the set designer for NTD Television's culinary competition on Times Square. Christie's New York launches its Asian art sale this week, and Chinese works of art form the largest portion of its autumn sale. Margaret Trey visited Christie's for a preview of the most extraordinary Chinese artworks, some of which may have already been auctioned.
This week, Christie's Auction House in New York presents Asian Art Week with over 500 lots of items in jade, porcelain, ceramics, and archaic bronze in its autumn sale. Chinese artworks form the largest portion. One of the highlights is the 18th century jade brush pot from Emperor Qianlong's period of the Qing Dynasty.
It was probably carved in the imperial workshops, and thus is subjected to the highest standard of quality. It's made from a large, beautiful section of spinach green jade.
Christie's Department of Chinese Works of Art co-head Michael Bass describes the scene on the pot.
And it's really beautifully carved with an interesting scene of the 6 scholars of Jushi. And those scholars, they are famous individuals of the Tang Dynasty.
It depicts a traditional Chinese scholar's garden with a pavilion, rocks and plant life.
So on this brush pot, you see a number of the scholars holding their wine cups and traversing this beautiful landscape scene with a lot of hills and mountains and dotted with bamboo and different types of trees.
Also from Qianlong period is this dual-cylinder champion vase in white jade.
Champion vase. And that name is derived from the 2 creatures here, the eagle and the bear, which together are a pun on the name Ying Xiong, which means champion or hero.
Bass says the vessel would likely be used in traditional Chinese weddings to hold wine for the bride and groom. Both items come from the collection of the late 19th century industrialist and philanthropist Herbert R. Bishop. Another rare item is a giant blue and white fish jar, measuring 27 inches in diameter.
Yeah, so this is a very impressive, large, underglazed blue decorated fish bowl dating to the reign of the Jiajing Emperor, whose reign mark is written right here.
A fish bowl of this size is difficult to make.
It was very difficult to maintain the thickness of the walls, to develop something this size, and it would take a very long time to fire in the kiln, up to 9 days.
Bass talks about the unusual combination of motifs.
It exhibits the 5-clawed dragon, a symbol of imperial authority. It's also a very rare combination of the dragon being shown amidst elements of a lotus pond. Typically you see dragons striding amidst clouds or amongst waves, but so it's a very unusual, and I think it's the only example that we know of showing that combination of motifs.
The jar expects to fetch $200,000 to $300,000. Another highlight is a rare bronze wine vessel called a zun from the late Shang Dynasty over 1,000 years BC. This unusually broad wine vessel is expected to fetch $600,000 to $800,000. Also featured is a unique collection of Asian art reference books, periodicals and catalogs. This includes selections from the personal library of C.T. Lu, a prominent collector, dealer, and educator of Chinese art in the West.
He educated people who were interested in this art form, and so he educated people as to what was important, what was considered to be important Chinese art, Asian art, what was authentic, and how to develop one's taste.
Christie's Department of Chinese Works of Art co-head Noah Kofferman stresses the importance of having good reference materials.
And so all these books around us here in this room are the teachers that C.T. Lu used as his reference for what came through his hands, and the dating and the authenticity.
The reference library collection is worth over $1 million. Christie's expects to rake in $15 million from this week's sale.
For the third year in a row, NTD Television will hold its annual Chinese culinary competition on Times Square, New York. For one night, the square will be transformed into ancient Chang'an, the capital of China's Tang Dynasty. Hedges now talks to the woman behind the transformation.
Recreating the capital of China's ancient Tang Dynasty in an unlikely place.
This time we want to use New York's Times Square to introduce the beauty of China's Tang Dynasty to more people.
For the past 2 years, NTD Television has held its international Chinese culinary competition on Times Square, and this year is no different. Besides the culinary competition, NTD Television will also hold its 2012 benefit gala on the square. The choice of an outdoor venue for the competition and feast conveys the spirit of Tang times.
From the poems and paintings of that era, we can see that Tang people liked to have banquets outside at night. They traveled around, had feasts in the countryside, and even in the imperial garden. From the paintings, we can see that people of that time had a good quality of life, not just with food. They went to garden parties with music, songs, and dance.
NTD art director Wei Jane-chi has worked hard over the past few years to bring Tang Dynasty Chang'an to Times Square. While the setting looks ancient, it has to be functional. Each kitchen booth has to be fitted out with modern appliances.
What's difficult is how to install the refrigerator, the stove, and also the water system within that 8 by 6.5 feet space. I feel that's the hardest part. Our engineers had to overcome a lot of problems.
Despite the differences in time period, Wei Jane thinks Times Square shares many similarities with China's ancient capital city of Chang'an.
Times Square really makes me think of Chang'an, which was a highly cultured place. There are many different ethnicities in Times Square, and the variety of products being displayed in Times Square is huge. If you look at those screens, they're all displaying products. It makes me think of how in the past, people from many countries would bring their precious products to Chang'an to present them as a tribute to the emperor.
This year, the competition will run from September 27th to 28th, with a benefit banquet on the evening of the 27th.
And that's all for this week's show. Starting next week, Discovering China will move to its own channel on YouTube. So to subscribe to our new channel and keep watching Discovering China, click subscribe at the end of this episode. We'll bring you more on NTD Television's culinary competition in the coming weeks. See you soon.